Nate with the Six Shop, here to talk about the NDC dual caliper brackets. So there's a lot of questions since these don't come with instructions about what all the pieces are for and how they assemble, and it seems like a lot of times people want instructions and there's none available. So this is the main bracket. This is for 0304 Cowie. This is for a third caliper, a stock 0304, 0506, 0708 up to 12 foot brake caliper will bolt straight onto these two bolts here, two bolt holes, and work on the factory rotor. You can add a radial caliper with these bolts to the side, and if you wanted to add a second radial caliper, you can bolt this piece on, and then two more bolts come in from the bottom, and you could have a radial 4-piston caliper here and one here, along with the foot brake also, or any combination of those. If you wanted to use a radial 4-piston for your foot brake, you can mount that here and then put your handbrake here, or vice versa, any combination. If you were to use a 250mm big rotor, there's a piece that we add a sticker to the package here to explain what it is. This piece is kind of like a little kidney bean shape, maybe. This is a spacer for the foot brake. If you were to add the 250mm rotor, you would bolt this piece on with the included bolts. It'll now push this mount out so that your caliper will bolt to this outside bolt and this one, and it pushes it up so that it'll fit the 250mm rotor. Also, if you're going to use the 260mm Hayabusa rotor with the NDC Hayabusa rotor adapter, then you would mount the special Hayabusa foot brake caliper adapter to these bolts with this adapter to push it all the way out to 260mm. Also included with all of them are spacers, a couple different sizes. These are to space the 4-piston calipers so that you can get the proper spacing for whatever size rotor you're using and whatever size caliper you're using, because some bikes come with larger and smaller front fork mounts and rotors, so sometimes you need to space the caliper out to match the rotor. So these are all of the included parts that come with the NDC dual caliper bracket kit. So it comes with the main bracket, of course, the 250mm spacer here, two bolts to attach the 250mm spacer, which would go like this. Anytime you bolt any of this together, you want to use Loctite. I like to use the stick. You can use the liquid type, but whatever type you prefer, make sure you use some kind of Loctite so that it doesn't back out unexpectedly. Once this was in place, whether you're using, if you are using a bigger rotor, now these included bolts will hold your caliper, or if you were to use an adapter, let's say for a Nissan foot brake here, now these bolts will go into the Nissan adapter. If you were going to use a Nissan foot brake on your stock rotor, it would bolt straight to the bracket in the lower bolt section with those included bolts. For the 4-piston radial calipers, these are the bolts that will go through the caliper. There's two different size spacers. You may not need the spacers at all. If you were to use, say, a 250mm rotor with an R6 monoblock caliper, it'll bolt straight on and no spacers required. If you were using, say, the front calipers from a 03 to 06 Kawasaki, 0304 especially, they come with a 260mm front rotor, I believe, maybe 280. You probably need a larger spacer when using the bigger rotor, but you can figure it out when you set the caliper up against the rotor. If it's making, you can see on the rear if it's going to clear, if it's going to hit the caliper. You want it to be perfectly with the pads, and use whatever spacers are appropriate to accomplish that. These are the bolts that will attach through these holes here into the threaded holes in the bracket. Again, use Loctite or some type of thread lock to attach this. These are 8mm Allen heads, and then that will allow you to attach an additional 4-piston caliper to the bottom area here. Typically you would use a front right in this location, so it would put the bleeder on top, and a front left on this position, which would put the bleeder kind of uphill. And they could be done the other way, but it's easier to bleed them if you use them in that configuration. When purchasing an NDC bracket from the stick shop, this is how it will be sent to you. We pre-assemble this block with Loctite, so you would never lose it, because over the last few years I've learned that a lot of people lose this block and then they decide they want to add another caliper and they can't because they don't have the block, need to repurchase it, etc. So we just go ahead and mount it on there. If you don't like it, you can take it off, but it's there. Instead of having a bunch of loose pieces, we put everything in this bag together. It's labeled. This is the little adapter that you saw earlier for the foot brake caliper for use on big rotors. It stays labeled, don't even need to open it unless you have a bigger rotor, but you'll know what it is later. The bolts for the calipers, all the spacers for the 4-piston caliper, and stickers inside, the bolts for the other 4-piston, and that's it. Another question that comes up a lot is printed on the back of every NDC bracket is what model it's for. So this one here, if I can get this to show up, says 0304636. Well, if you did purchase a bracket for an F4i, which has these aluminum inserts for the smaller axle and an aluminum insert on the slider, don't be alarmed, because it will say 0304636. It does not say F4i or Honda anywhere on it, because it actually is an 0304636 bracket, just like these other ones, but has these aluminum inserts for the smaller axle and this aluminum insert for the slide. So this video is about the NDC brackets, the dual caliper brackets for handbrake. Really great option, real good bang for the buck. The base bracket for any model is $235, and that comes with everything needed to run on a stock caliper or a 250mm big rotor. They come anodized black, a really nice finish, won't tarnish, won't get corroded over time. Without having to buy extra adapters, it's a pretty good option for the money. Most dual caliper brackets out on the market are machined with the pattern for 03 to 12 stock Kawasaki foot brake, and then there's different adapters for other type of foot brake calipers. Same thing is true here on the NDC. If you did have, say, a Nissan on a F4i bracket like this one, then there is an adapter to hold your Nissan foot brake caliper that bolts to the Kawasaki pattern. If you didn't want to buy the extra adapter, you could put a Kawasaki caliper. I mean, you're going to spend probably as much as the adapter buying a Kawasaki caliper unless you have one laying around. And the Nissan caliper is a better quality, so I suggest running it like this. The setup for the bracket for the NDC system with the foot brake caliper adapter is $299. These are the 250mm direct bolt-on rotors for the Kawasaki. This is an OEM style Hayabusa rotor, 260mm. If you do run the Hayabusa rotor, you need one of these adapter rings. They make them for Honda, Kawasaki, and Yamaha. If you do run the Hayabusa rotor with this adapter ring, you will need a special Busa adapter for the foot brake. So these will say Busa on the back of them. So basically it's $65 for the adapter and $65 for the foot brake caliper adapter. And so bolted together it looks like this, and it's a pretty good system.